Hi guys, welcome back to Nerd Chic Bookworm with Alice, and today I am doing a long overdue video. I was looking at my YouTube on Monday and realised just how long it has been since I did my last video. It's been almost a month and I am very ashamed with that because that is just awful. Unfortunately, life has got in the way and things have just got a little bit crazy, which I think I say every time I do a video, but life happens and I am sorry. Hopefully I am back to it now and I'll be back every week and there won't be an issue. So yeah, fingers crossed, everything's settling down and going back to normal. I would also like to say hello and welcome to my new subscribers that I have. Thank you and welcome. I hope you enjoy what you see on my channel. Today I have decided that I am going to do it's not really a very structured video, it's kind of a mismatch of a lot of different things that I thought I'd just kind of shimmy into all one video and just talk about everything all together. I think with my last video, when that was posted about a month ago, there was you know, the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and there was the Black Lives Matter protests and stuff like that. And as I was looking at everything on Facebook and Instagram and sort of reading things in the news, I realised just how much I didn't know about what was going on and sort of how uneducated I was, and I thought the best thing to do would be to educate myself. So I did some research, I found some books online that were recommended by a lot of people to sort of give you an understanding and sort of the basics and what you need to know about race and racism in the world. And I have picked up some fiction about slavery and sort of what life is like for black people in the world, whether in history or now. And I've also collected some books that aren't necessarily about race and racism but are written by black or minority ethnic authors that I want to read, and so I can support them. So I thought what I'd do today is just kind of collect all of them up and just have a quick brief discussion about each one that I've got, so you can see. It's a bit of a TBR, it's a bit of a book haul, it's just a bit of everything that I've accumulated over the last couple of months that I thought, hey, I'll just put it together and show you, and that'll be my video. So the first one that I have got is Race by Toni Morrison, and this is one of the vintage mini editions that they've done, and this is sort of short snippets and selections of 3 of her books: Song of Solomon, The Bluest Eye and Beloved. I think Beloved is probably her most famous work, I believe, and this is just sort of little sort of excerpts out of her books and little quotes and things like that, and I thought this would be just a good sort of introduction to race and looking at race and the hardship and, you know, just sort of life in general. Toni Morrison is a really famous writer, and she is a black author, and I just thought it would be a good sort of introduction. And also I thought if I'd read these little snippets and liked it, then I could go on to buy the full book and read those too. So this is sort of why I chose this one. So yeah, this is Race by Toni Morrison. It's vintage, it's only £3.50, but I think I got it for a bit cheaper than that on Amazon. And there's a whole selection of these books that you can choose with lots of different subjects. But I chose this one for the very reason. The next one is probably another one that you've seen so much of over the past few months, and this is Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rini Edo Lodge. Again, this is a non-fiction book that I probably don't need to talk about very much. This is basically just looking at race in general in Britain. This one is specific to Britain, whereas some of the other ones I have are more based in America. I think this, I'm trying to have a look, I think this might be actually the only one that's sort of UK based, which is why I picked this one up, because quite a lot of the other ones that I looked at on book recommendations and stuff were very USA focused, and obviously living in the UK I wanted one that was sort of more relevant to my life. So this is one that I'm hoping to get to really soon. I think pretty much everybody has this or has read this or at least has heard about it. But I think it's definitely going to be a very honest and eye-opening book, and I hope that it's going to educate me in the right way. The next one that I've got is, this is based in the USA, and this is The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colourblindness by Michelle Alexander. This is another non-fiction book about sort of the situation where many African Americans and black people are being incarcerated, and sort of how the criminal justice is stacked against them just because of the colour of their skin. And this looks at sort of the politics and who makes these rules and why they make these rules and why these people are so prejudiced against. So yeah, I've seen a lot of people on BookTube reading this. Lena Norms and Jess from Sunbeam's Jess has read this and both said it was amazing, one of their favourite books. So I thought I would pick it up. This one actually took me a really long time to get, because every time I was looking for it, it was sold out like everywhere. It took me a really, really, really long time to find this. So I'm so glad that I have it now, because this is one that I am wanting to get to very, very soon. This next one is sort of similar to New Jim Crow, but not really. I'm sorry, that doesn't really make much sense. This is The Black and the Blue by Matthew Horace and Ron Harris, and this is a book, another non-fiction book about a man, Matthew Horace, who is a black man in the police force who is writing about his own experience of racism within the police force, focused on him and his experiences because he is a black man. Now, he has had 28 years in the police force, and 7 years into his career as I think he was working, it doesn't actually say where he was working at the time, but 7 years into his service with the police force, he was held at gunpoint, face down on the floor, by a man pointing a gun at his head, who actually ended up being a fellow police officer who was white. And this is looking at sort of his experience of the police force in general, and how racism is not just with the criminals and the people that they pick up off the streets, but also within the police force as a brotherhood. And I just thought this was a really interesting concept, because you don't hear much about the police force and the racism of police forces. It's, you know, it's very much the police force out to get innocent black people on the street. You know, it's not police force turning against each other. It's not the police force going against each other because of the colour of their skin. But I do think, like, behind closed doors, there is a lot of that going on. It just doesn't get, like, spoken about. Because, like, there is this sort of thing with police forces where it's brotherhood and you can't grass and you can't sort of turn on your own, and no matter what happens, you don't, you know, go behind someone's back because it's your brothers and you're together, and you know, so I don't think you hear from the side of a police officer about other police officers. It's just, I mean, when I found this, there was no other books like it that I could find anyway. I mean, if there is, please leave a comment and let me know. But I couldn't find any when I was searching. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into this one. I think it's going to be a really good, interesting read. So yeah, this is going to be one that I'm going to get to really, really soon. I think this is the last. Is the last non-fiction? Might be. This is Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Shetley, and this is the untold story of the African American women who helped win the space race. So this is looking at 3 African American women who were known as these human computers, who were like these great mathematicians who helped to sort of do the mathematics and the science behind it to launch rockets and sort of the astronauts into space. And this starts in World War II and moves through to the Cold War and the space race. And it's a powerful revolutionary tale of race discrimination and achievement in the modern world. This is also a film. I'm not sure when the film came out. This book came out in 2016, and I think the film came out sort of around that time as well. I own the film. I have seen most of the film. I haven't seen all, and I really enjoyed what I saw of the film. So I do want to get to this. I don't like the cover though. This is the like the film tie-in covers, and I'm not a fan of TV tie-in covers. However, I don't really care that much because it's the story inside that I want to read. So yeah, it just sounds really interesting. You know, it's about women, it's about black women, and doing something that sort of changed history and helped history along. And I just think that women, especially black women in history, should be celebrated. So this is one book that I am really looking forward to, just to celebrate the women, girl power. Next up, I have 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup. This also is a major motion picture. This is this is his autobiography, so again this is a non-fiction. It's a true story. I don't know much about it. It came up on my Amazon search when I was looking for books about race and racism and slavery. This was one that popped up, and I knew it was a film, so I thought that would be a really good one to look into. This was actually first published in 1853. Wow, okay. I didn't realise how long ago it was. So I'll just read the back because I don't know too much about this myself. So 1841, Solomon Northup is a successful violinist when he's kidnapped and sold into slavery. Taken from his family in New York State and forced to work on the cotton plantations in the Deep South, he spends the next 12 years in captivity until his eventual escape. First published in 1853, this extraordinary true tale proves to be a powerful voice in the debate over slavery in the years leading up to the Civil War. It is a testament to one man's courage and conviction in the face of unfathomable injustice and brutality. Its influence on the course of American history cannot be overstated. So yeah, really looking forward to this. I realised very early on that I do not know anything about slavery and black history, and I am disgusted with myself that I don't know that, but I don't, unfortunately. So yeah, I think this is going to be very interesting. Sad, I think it's probably going to be quite heart-wrenching. I mean, they're not easy topics to talk about, so I don't think I'm going to enjoy it necessarily, but I do think it's an important read. The next one is very similar actually. This is Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe, or Stowe, I'm not sure how to say that. And this is basically this is a novel, but again it's about slavery. And this is it says it is the most popular, influential and controversial book written by an American. Stowe's rich panoramic novel passionately dramatises why the whole of America is implicated in and responsible for the sin of slavery, and resoundingly concludes that only repentance, justice and mercy will prevent the onset of the wrath of Almighty God. So it's looking at race, slavery, abolition, black people, gender, bit of religion in there. I think it's one of those books that it's sort of like, if you want a book about slavery and race and racism, this is sort of like one of the original books. So I picked this up. This is the Wordsworth Classic Editions, and yeah, I picked it up. It was £2.50 on Amazon. It's quite a chunky book, I didn't realise, and the writing is really small, so I think it's going to take me quite a while to get into this. These books, I have to admit, I'm not really wanting to rush these books. This is more of an education, so it's not books where I just want to read and read and read and like read quickly and get, you know, the most amount of numbers that I can of books read. These are books that I do want to slow down and savour and really take in my education. So yeah, this is one that I will get to. Like I said, very small writing, quite a chunky book. So I don't know when I will get to this, but all of these books I am wanting to get to. The next one is another one about slavery, and this is one that I'd never heard of before actually. This is Yellow Crocus, and this is a novel by Layla Ibrahim, and again, I've not read this one, so I'll just read the back. Moments after Lisbeth is born, she's taken from her mother and handed over to an enslaved wet nurse, Mattie, a young mother separated from her own infant son in order to care for her tiny charge. Thus begins an intense relationship that will shape both of their lives for decades to come. Though Lisbeth leads a life of privilege, she finds nothing but loneliness in the company of her overwhelmed mother and her distant slave-owning father. As she grows older, Mattie becomes more like family to Lisbeth than her own kin, and the girl's visits to the slave quarters and the lively and loving community she finds there bring the two closer together than ever. But can two women in such disparate circumstances form a bond like theirs without consequence? This deeply moving tale of unlikely love traces the journey of these very different women as each search for freedom and dignity. So I just thought it sounded brilliant, basically. I can't really say much more than that. I thought it just sounded really, really good. So I picked it up. It's one that I'd never, ever heard of before. I'd never seen it on BookTube. I'd never seen it advertised anywhere. I typed in, I think on Amazon, I typed in books about slavery, and this came up, and I just clicked on it, read it, and bought it straight away. Yeah, like I said, it's not one that I've ever heard of. But I'm really glad that I bought it. It's it's one that I am really looking forward to reading. The next one has been everywhere the past few months, if not years. This is the Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. I thought this was his debut novel, but it's not. And this is about a young girl called Cora who is a slave on a cotton plantation in Georgia. And she's wanting to get away from where she is. So she meets someone called Caesar, a slave recently arrived from Virginia, and they tell her about the Underground Railroad, and Cora decides to accompany him on his escape. And this story actually, the Underground Railroad was a metaphor in history, but this novel has actually assumed a physical form. So it's a dilapidated boxcar pulled by a steam locomotive, picking up fugitives wherever it can. And it sort of follows Cora's journey. She's pursued by a slave catcher, and it's just sort of, I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be really interesting. I think it looks a lot into slavery and the history of slavery. And yeah, I've like I said, I've seen it all over Facebook. I thought it was really good, so I picked it up. I wanted Facebook, Instagram. No, not even that. Oh my god, my head just isn't working. YouTube, BookTube. I saw this on BookTube, not Facebook, not Instagram. Although I have seen it on Instagram quite a bit, but that's not what I meant. I meant YouTube. Oh, my head's just not working. It's quite hot here today, and I think the heat's getting to me. Next one that I picked up was Homegoing by Yagasi. This follows two sisters, Effia and Essie, and one is sold into slavery, and one gets married off to one becomes a slave trader's wife. And it follows both lines. So it follows Effia and her ancestors, and Essia and her ancestors, and their future generations, so their children, their grandchildren. It goes through Africa, Mississippi, Ghana, Harlem, and it's just sort of a generational novel, and you get different outlooks. I think there's quite a few points of view in it, so you follow quite a few different people. But yeah, I've heard really good things about this. Was this shortlisted for something, or have I got that totally wrong? I'm sure this was shortlisted. No, maybe not. But this is a debut novel, and it's so pretty as well. I mean, how gorgeous is that? So I'm looking forward to jumping into this. Yeah, it didn't come out too long ago, 2016. So it hasn't been out too long. So yeah, that's another one. The next one, this is one that I have read. I went on a little mini break to Scotland this past weekend, and I read this while I was there. It's quite a short book, it didn't take me very long. This is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I'm sorry if I've butchered that name. I think that's right, but I'm not sure. And this is basically a book. It's a novel about two sisters, Karidi and Ayula. And Ayula keeps murdering her boyfriends, basically. And every time she does it, she rings Caridi or Carida, I don't know how to pronounce it, and she rings her sister, and her sister goes and basically cleans up the murder and kind of helps get rid of the body and just kind of hides it all from everybody. And then one day the Ayula, who's the murdering sister, she falls for a man who works with Caridi, who Caridi kind of fancies, and it gets a bit crazy. There is funny bits in this story, but there's also some very dark bits. I love the characters. Caridi, I really like her. Ayula, she is amazing and fascinating to read about. The way she handles the situations that she puts herself in, and the way she just kind of has no care about anybody's feelings other than her own. But it's also about sisters and sisterhood and what family means, and sort of what you do for family to keep them safe and to keep them out of trouble and to keep them out of danger. And I really, really liked it. It's really short chapters. It's almost cinematic. It's very sort of bitty and sceney, and it's very short, and each chapter is very short and then it quickly moves on to something else. So in a way it's very cinematic in that way. It's like lots of different scenes, rather than sort of your generalised sort of chapter book. But it's really good. It's funny in places, it's heartbreaking in places. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I would definitely recommend it. It is really, really good, and it's a debut. So for a debut novel, I think it's a really, really good book, and I would recommend everybody read it. The next ones, we're nearly done, I promise. So I also have got Queenie by, what's she called? Candice Carty-Williams. I don't know much about this. I've heard that it is sort of a black Bridget Jones's Diary type deal. And I love Bridget Jones's Diary, and I thought, hey, that sounds pretty good. I'd seen it on BookTube quite a lot, and a lot of people loved it. So I picked it up when it came out in paperback. I believe it's sort of, I thought it was, oh, it's not diary entries, I thought it was, but what I'm looking at, there's sort of text message entries, and it looks at mental health and things like that, and I don't know much more about this book until I read it. I'm sorry, but I picked it up. I wanted to. I've got it. I'm looking forward to reading it. The next one, Noughts and Crosses, Mallory Blackman. This is one that I feel like I should have read years ago, and I didn't, and I never did. So I was shopping a few weeks ago, and I went into a local discount bookstore where I live, and they had all 4 of the books in the series for £8 for all 4 of them. So I picked them up, I grabbed them, and so now I have all, even though they've brought out a 5th one very recently, I've got the 4, and then I can just go and buy the 5th one. I've heard really good things about this. Like, a lot of people say it's amazing. I believe it's a young adult novel, and I believe they've made a TV series or a movie of Noughts and Crosses. I'm sure I've seen that advertised somewhere as well. So this is basically what I believe it is the black people. Yeah, I believe the black people are sort of the rich and powerful people in this story, and the white people are sort of the slaves and at the lower end of the race and of the population. That's what I think, and I think it's a bit, you know, star-crossed lovers. One of them falls for a nought falls for a cross, or a cross falls for a nought, and kind of fall in love, and it's a bit forbidden and it's sort of frowned upon, and it's that kind of thing. But I've heard really amazing things about it, and I've got all 4 of them. But I just brought the first one out. So yeah, there's Noughts and Crosses, then Knife Edge, Checkmate, Double Cross, and then they've brought a 5th one out, but I can't remember what that one's called. So yeah, this just seems to be one that everybody knows about and everybody's read, and I haven't read it, and I feel like I just should. I feel like it's one of those books that everybody should read in their life, along with this one, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. This is a book that I cannot believe I haven't read. This is about race and racism, and this is about a black man who is charged with attacking a white girl, and it explores the issues of race and class in the deep south of the 1930s with compassion and humour. This is one of those books that I think everybody should read. It's a classic. It's one of those on like top 50 books to read before you die kind of lists. And I picked it up, and this cover, I mean, this is by far the best cover I have seen of this book. This is it's the vintage fiction. I mean, it's just so pretty. I mean, how gorgeous is that cover? I love vintage books. I've got quite a few of these vintage with the red spines. This is the 3rd, so I've got a couple there as well. So this is To Kill a Mockingbird, and it is just one of them books that I feel like everybody should read, and I should have read by now. I'm 32 and I still haven't read it, and I am ashamed of myself for that, but I've got it now, and it is on my TBR, and it will be getting read. The last 2, again, this is another sort of classic that I've heard a lot of people talking about. This is Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor. I believe this is a children's book about race. It says, Cassie Logan finds it hard to understand why the family farm means so much to her father. She finds it even harder growing up in a place like Mississippi in the 1930s. But as she witnesses the prejudice and destruction all around her, Cassie begins to see why she must find strength in the people she loves and stand up for what she believes in. Again, it's another story about race and racism, but this is aimed, I believe, more for children. I don't know too much about it. Again, most of these books I don't know much about, and that was sort of the point of buying them, because I don't know much about them, and because I don't know sort of anything about anything really. I thought I'd just buy as much as I can and educate myself on all aspects. And I saw someone on BookTube talking about this, and she said it was one of her favourite books of all time, so I picked it up. The last one that I've got to talk to you about is The Fisherman by Chigozie Obiama. I think that's right. I don't know. Don't kill me if it's not. Chigozi Obioma. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. I don't know if it's true, but this was shortlisted for the Man Booker. I knew it was. In 2015, I think. Doesn't actually say, it just says shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize. And this is a book based in a small town in western Nigeria, and it is about 4 brothers who have a very strict father and a very sort of strict upbringing, and one day the father goes, he disappears, or he's at work, or something happens to the father and he's no longer sort of with the family, and they take it upon themselves, these 4 brothers, to go to this forbidden local river to fish for themselves and for the family. And when they get there, there is this man who is local to this town, who is known as sort of the local madman, and he predicts that the oldest boy out of this group of brothers will be killed by another one of his brothers. And it kind of, this prophecy kind of puts in place all of these catastrophic events and a tragic chain of things happening. And it just sounded really good. I'd seen this spoken about on Jen Campbell's channel when she was doing, when she was reviewing all the Man Booker shortlisted books for whichever year this was. I think it was 2015, and I saw this book and it just sounded brilliant, so I picked it up. I'm looking forward to reading it, and it's a book that I'm really looking forward to. So that's it. I can't believe that I finally got through it all. I'm sorry I wasn't very detailed, but I don't really know much about these books myself at the minute. Obviously when I read them and I do a wrap up, I'll have a lot more to say about each one. But yeah, thanks for listening, and hopefully, fingers crossed, if life goes simply again, I will see you next time. Hopefully Sunday. I won't make any promises, but fingers crossed, I'll see you all on Sunday. Bye guys.